All right, hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are currently in the book of Matthew, and I'm doing something different because I am going live. So I'm doing the Bible study live and just trying something out new, got some new programs. But anyway, so we are in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 4, where Jesus begins his um, um, public ministry. And I'm saying that he begins the public ministry with a bang, okay, with a bang. And um, so I'm gonna jump to this. I'm gonna see if I can go through this quickly here because I'm doing something new here. So uh, in the last video, we went in chapter 4. We see how Jesus. Let's bring up the. We see how Jesus. We see how Jesus starts his public ministry by um, preaching the gospel. Now, again, as we move through chapter 4, this is all important because um, all this shows or demonstrates that Jesus is the Messiah. Remember, Matthew presents the most Jewish Jesus, okay? And then the other gospels, they present kind of a different side of Jesus. But Matthew's gospel, without a doubt, is the most Jewish of um, the picture of Jesus. I wanted to go back to verse 23. And I think this sets up as we move into chapter 5. Um, so let's pick this up here. All right. So verse 23 says, Jesus was going all over Galilee. Now, I want to kind of go back because if you remember in verse 18, he calls Peter and Andrew and James and John to follow him. And I said last time that when you look at this setting here, when you look at this, Um, it almost seems like, if you just kind of read it as Matthew was telling the story, that Jesus just sort of kind of walked around. And if you go with a lot of the Christian movies, you got the music playing, and then all of a sudden, he's kind of got a glazed look about himself. And as he's walking along, this man appears out of nowhere and he speaks to Peter and Andrew and James and John with that kind of mellow voice and says, "Follow me." And it's just something about him, the music playing, right? And then they just get up and just walk. And the reality is that they had been watching Jesus, excuse me, for almost a year at the time of this calling, or certainly months, okay? So they were making but when they followed Jesus, this was a very informed choice. It was a choice of faith, but it was also an informed choice. So now, as he moves on in verse 23, we see it says here, so Jesus was going all over Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among people. So this is, again, when you see this tells us Jesus, by healing the people, this was a fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy. The Old Testament, the Messiah that Jesus was to come. Now, the reason why this is important because later on, we're going to see doubt, the doubt in people. His own family, Mary, his own, all of these people who heard the audible witness given by God, the signs and the wonders that's here, that Jesus is displaying. And yet you're going to see that people will doubt. And the reason why I say that particularly because many of the Jewish people expected, they were looking for the Messiah. Except they were looking for the Messiah that was going to come and set up Israel. Now let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. I'm going to go to Acts. Let me go to Acts chapter 1 just to show you. By the way, this is interesting because, keep this in mind, this is about 3 years after the intervention and the events of Matthew 4. So notice he says here, in verse 6. So let me tell you about while they had come together, they asked him, Lord, are you restoring the kingdom to Israel at this time? Now, that is an amazing question coming from the disciples. An amazing question. Now, so while we could criticize that, we can also not criticize it because at this point, they're just asking the question. There were people who kind of lost faith in Jesus, but they didn't. And that's the difference right here. But notice that they asked the question, excuse me. And remember, this is just moments before Jesus ascends into heaven. My point is they spend time with Jesus. They spent 3.5 years, approximately 3.5 years with Jesus. And so my question is, why are they still asking this question, right? So having seen all of this, and this is the beginning, how Jesus is going all over Galilee, what? Teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. Having seen all of this, here was the thing. They should have been able to come to the understanding that Jesus was here as the Lamb of God and will return as he will return, as the Messiah, the one who's going to, excuse me, the one who's going to set up the earthly kingdom. So, and even if you are kind of disappointed, and they were, even if you're kind of like, and we're going to see this kind of later on, where John the Baptist asked Jesus, are you the one who was to come? Now, John the Baptist has asked this question, are you the one who is to come, or should we look for another? That's kind of amazing coming from John the Baptist, when God himself tells John the Baptist, that's the one, when you see the Spirit descend on him, like a dove, this is the one. And yet he's asking, because again, he's asking from a messianic perspective. The reason why I'm going over this, because here was, and by the way, John did not falter in his faith. Again, all he was doing was asking the question. And there were other people that, again, demonstrated that, yeah, we're kind of like not understanding why you're not setting up the kingdom. But as you can see, what Jesus is demonstrating here is that he is the Messiah. And regardless of how you think things should have unfolded, he still is the Messiah. And that is what I think is the biggest thing. Uh, I, that has kind of amazed me about how the disciples play out. But we'll get into that later. More than that, I should say. So he said Jesus was going over to Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness among the people. I also want to say this. When we see representative of God, and I'm using that term because Jesus came, Jesus manifested as a representation of God. In other words, in eternity past, Jesus is the instrument, the vehicle by which all of creation would know God. So if you think about John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay? Let me do that. Let me go there. Let me show you that because I think that's important. That is important. Okay, so John 1. So he says, in the beginning was the Word. Now this term word, the term word here, means it is the expression. It gives expression to thought. So imagine you go all the way back. You're going back into eternity past. You're going back. You're going back. You're going back. You go past your birth. You go past the creation of the earth. You go back past the creation of the universe. You go back in eternity past as far as you possibly can go back. As far as you can possibly go back, you would run into God. That's what you would run into. God is the beginning. However, notice the statement that John makes. In the beginning was the Word, because what you would see, what you would have encountered is the Word. In the beginning was the Word. So the Word is the expression of God. The Word is the visible expression of the invisible God. So in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So then we come to verse 14. The Word became flesh and took up residency among us. We observed his glory, the glory as of the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. So what you would have observed, so there's two ways we can observe. The disciples saw him in the flesh. We read and hear and are preached about him in the flesh. If the message is accurately preached, the word that when he says we took up residency among us, this is what we would have observed. And look at verse 18. No one has seen God, the one and only Son who is at the Father's side. He has revealed him. So when we see this picture here, Jesus was going all over Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. Excuse me. So what is it that we're seeing about Jesus? This is the revelation of God, that he is the instrument decided within the Godhead before the foundation of the world that Jesus would reveal the Father. So regardless of what our expectations are, regardless, what we are observing is the glory of the Son of God. So, verse 24 says, then this news about him spread throughout Syria. And again, this would be kind of up north, little north of Galilee. So they brought to him all those who were afflicted, those suffering from various disease, and intense pain, the demon-possessed, the epileptics, and the paralytics, and he healed them. Large crowds followed him from Galilee, Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judah, and beyond Jordan. Now, I want to say this because you see a lot of fake healing ministries and ministers today. And it is a shame that people heap titles upon themselves. But it gets worse when they pretend to be healers. Here is the point. In the Bible, true people who are called by God, and we can also go and say who have been called with a healing ministry, will heal people. It will be none of this nonsense of just knocking people to the floor. That's a show. And shame on those ministers and pastors, one, who allow these guys into their church, who themselves practice it, what they call healing prayer lines. And you pray for people and then they just fall to the ground. And basically you tell them, go on your way, not healed. See, not healed, but go on your way. Use faith. Or if you notice, the people with the real tangible conditions are never healed. Shame on you for that. Jesus healed people. He healed them. They were healed. And notice he says various diseases, intense pains, and then he says demon possessed. Now it's kind of interesting because we don't see a lot or hear a lot about demon possession. And it's kind of confusing with different medical conditions today. So like what is a demon possessed or possession? Right? What is that? How does that manifest? Is it mental illness? Is it epileptic? Notice here we notice that epilepsy is not demon possession. So let me just say this: demon possession, and we're gonna get more into that. We're gonna get more into that later. But demon possession, okay, is actual demons taking control of a body. Okay, actual demons taking control of a body. All right. So this is what Jesus manifested. And thus he demonstrated that he was the Messiah. He healed them. And again, actually healed them. Now, verse 25, he says, large crowds followed him from Galilee. Now, this is a prelude for when we get into chapter 5. So as he's traveling through, now keep it in mind, as I said, as Matthew was telling the story, he's just telling the story. He's not. Luke will give us a more chronological order. Matthew doesn't. Matthew just tells the story. So these events, as he's telling them, he basically just, this is what happened, right? But he's not saying, day 1 at 8:00, day 2. No, this is what happens. And my point is, so there's time sometimes that goes on, and you have to think it would take time, right? It would take time, as he's traveling through all of these regions right here. Okay, so and then as the crowds are gathering because they are healing it, and this, like I say, if someone has a reputation of healing, you're going to gather crowds. And Jesus healed them. All right, guys. I'm going to stop it here. We're going to pick it up in chapter 5 next time. Don't forget to like and share these videos. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, you are free to add any comment. Add the comments. All comments are welcome. And I will see you next time.